Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare.
If time allows, we can have a longer legend or kirtan. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is doing well, something that's standard in terms of Vedic literature, but it's really standard both in all types of literature and teaching technique. That is that he presents a synopsis of what it is that he's going to be talking about. And I was just looking somewhere, he points out, because he's not quite sure that he's actually going to have time to finish the whole book. So he wants to summarize it first. And generally that's the way. That's the standard teaching technique. You tell people what you're going to teach them, then you teach it to them, and then when you finish, then you tell them what you taught them. And that's how it comes out to be 3 times. So beginning and end are a summary, and then the middle is the main thing. And Shastra also works like that. You see, for instance, Srimad Bhagavatam ends in the 12th canto with this lengthy summary of all the cantos of the Bhagavatam, all the chapters of the Bhagavatam, and more or less what's being taught there. And so it serves these 2 purposes. One is that it helps really focus people's minds on the subject, and the other is that it gives the author the opportunity to write down something very important that if it's very long, he may not have the opportunity for some reason or other to complete. That was really Prabhupada's intent with Krishna book. I remember 1970 or 71 when Krishna book came out. And of course, Prabhupada also points out why he wrote Krishna book, because he didn't think he was going to get to the 10th canto. Or he may not. As it was, he just touched it. He just got as far as the 14th chapter, and there's 90 chapters. So it was good that he actually did that, and he did this summary study, same thing that he did with Chaitanya Charitamrita in the form of teachings of Lord Chaitanya first. And Srila Prabhupada said, well, actually the real essence of Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna's pastimes, is the 10th canto. So, but Prabhupada really started churning out Bhagavatam when he was already in his 70s. He had his first 3 volumes of the first canto, but Prabhupada got into the 2nd canto already when he was in the West. And Srila Prabhupada already sort of calculated the pace that he was working, that he would really have to live quite a long time. I mean, you can imagine more or less when Prabhupada was, after 10 years, in his 80th year, Prabhupada started the 10th canto in Bhubaneswar. And that was already in 1977. When Prabhupada started it, just at the Lord Nityananda Trayodasi. That's when he finished the 9th canto, and then he started the 10th canto. So that took him 10 years. And that's less than half in the Bhagavatam. So that would have meant that he would have had to live at least another 10 years to complete the 10th canto, and then 11th and 12th. So Srila Prabhupada made that decision early on, that no, better that he just give an overview of, and he called it the Krishna book. And that's the essence, because all the first 9 cantos of the Bhagavatam are meant to qualify devotees in order to enter into Krishna's pastimes. But that's what the whole purpose of the Bhagavatam is, because that's what the sages are asking. They want to know the essence of what they want, essence of all religion. What they say, well, tell us about the pastimes that Krishna and Balaram enacted when they appeared. And so Sutta Goswami is responding to that as he heard it from Shukadeva Goswami. Of course, one could ask, well, why we give the first 10 cantos if Prabhupada didn't finish the other 9, which would qualify them to read the first 10 cantos, then how could you enter into that? And of course there's different aspects to that answer, but one is because Srila Prabhupada said, I already put everything I wanted to say in the first canto. So Srila Prabhupada, because he wrote the first canto also with that idea in mind, that maybe I'm not going to finish, even get past the first. So whatever he wanted to say in terms of spiritual realization is already there, either in expanded form or in a sutra form, already in the first canto. So if you study the first canto carefully, then you'll be qualified to read the Krishna book. And that sort of simplifies things. In other words, the other 9 cantos are also in there. And the other aspect is that in Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada didn't just translate, he actually gave his running commentary, and that running commentary includes all of the teachings and the essence of the other 9 cantos as well. So as he's going along, Srila Prabhupada is qualifying his reader. And it's something that devotees, if they study Prabhupada's books very carefully, particularly if they have access to commentaries of acharyas, then Srila Prabhupada's, anyway, everyone realizes Srila Prabhupada's genius in some ways, but particularly his literary genius and empowerment in presenting Shastra becomes very, very evident. I remember when I was first doing Venugita, and there the chapters are all based on commentaries of Sridhar Swami, Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And translating all of that stuff, and then seeing what Prabhupada put in the running verses, as well as the sort of commentaries or preaching that he added to it. You see that Srila Prabhupada, when he translates, he's actually putting all of the essential points of the commentaries that the acharyas give into just his translation of a verse. So like the other day we were talking about this issue about Prabhupada, how he translated for meaning, not he translated just word for word, and because that's often the idea, you should just, that's what the academics say. He says, don't tell the people what it means, let them figure it out for themselves. So you're a materialist or a neophyte devotee, let them figure out what it is that Krishna wants to say. Don't have the self-realized acharyas explain Krishna's words. Everyone should just be free thinker, and they should just, either figure it out for themselves or give their interpretation. After all, everyone's idea is equally good as everyone else's. But that was Prabhupada's whole point, is that his duty as a realized acharya is to make Krishna's words, and even Krishna's words are relatively easy. Bhagavad Gita is easy, but Bhagavatam is very complex. There's a verse or a saying that the test of someone's scholarship, or one's scholarship in Sanskrit and as a scholar is tested by the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is very complex, and it's not for ordinary people. Bhagavad Gita is in very simple Sanskrit, and Krishna is quite straightforward in how he's speaking. So Srila Prabhupada would include explanatory, even when he's translating, you find that he often is actually already incorporating statements from the Acharya's commentaries into the translation. And Sridhar Swami is the basis of all translations, all commentaries. He gives very often very, very short explanations, and then everyone follows or expands on what Sridhar Swami says, and you can see that trend is there. Although Sridhar Swami's style is also very unique, because he isn't actually giving his commentary specifically to Shuddha Vaishnavas. His commentary is particularly geared at Mayavadis. Because at that time, Mayavadis were both challenging and at the same time dabbling with Bhagavatam. And he was using their type of terminology, their type of logic in order to bring a personal understanding to the Bhagavatam. So very often the way he approaches it is the way they would approach it, rather than the way just devotees would ordinarily approach something. But anyway, everyone still follows, even though he has a very particular slant, everyone still follows his methodology and his points. And then, but the Sanatana Goswami, his specialty is that he will give 4 or 5 interpretations to a verse. He'll say, it could mean this, it could mean that, it could mean that. And then other acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's, his specialty is that he always gives these explanations in the form of a running dialogue. So if you've seen, like, for instance, his explanation of the Gita, so he's like gives another conversation. There's like this sub-conversation going on between Arjuna and Krishna, as if Arjuna and Krishna are actually speaking like that, but that's how he's explaining the main verses of the Gita, and he does that same way. He does, particularly he has, particularly in the 10th canto. Anyway, so what Srila Prabhupada does is he takes all of these things, he takes all these purports, and sometimes these explanations, and sometimes he takes, in his translation, he takes things right out of someone's tika explanation, and he puts it right into it's not in the verse, he puts it into the verse because it makes it so very clear, and it adds depth, it can add so many things. Sometimes it may add humor, or sometimes it adds some extra taste or rasa to what's being said. It's the expertise of the acharyas. So by doing that, therefore simultaneously, oh yes, I was talking about Prabhupada's brilliance. So the same way Prabhupada had this extraordinary empowerment that he would present Srimad Bhagavatam and he would present the 10th canto, but simultaneously he would also be qualifying his readers for the stuff that they were actually reading. And yet he would make it so simple that actually very often devotees, just by the nature of Prabhupada's language, his logic, he makes everything so approachable that people would sometimes, not people, the devotees, because there's a whole class of devotees who say that Srila Prabhupada didn't necessarily present everything in his books, or didn't teach everything. And generally those people say that who haven't read Prabhupada's books. Because when you read Prabhupada's books, then you see that everything is there. But Srila Prabhupada will present everything in such a way that you can go out on the street and you can distribute it to materialistic people. Starting with Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, and no one will commit an offense by what they're reading. And Prabhupada simultaneously is presenting his books that they're suitable for non-devotees, suitable for devotees, for neophytes, intermediate devotees, and advanced devotees. According to your level of consciousness, you'll be able to extract things, what you need for your Krishna consciousness out of Srila Prabhupada's words. And that really takes empowerment. That just doesn't come from. I remember, we were talking about one of our devotees, ex-ISKCON devotees, who went and joined another group. And while he was still distributing books, he was still distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. And his explanation for was that because the acharya of the book group that he joined, he said, well, everyone knows that Prabhupada's books are for the masses. This is not for masses, this is just for devotees. So it isn't anyone that can actually do that, to actually present Krishna consciousness in such a very extraordinary way that it's almost like, it's like the air. You're sitting here and I don't know, there's 1,000 radio waves going through this air, and there's radio channels. So according to what music or what channel you want, you just tune in, and in the same air, different channels come out. So you can listen to, I don't know, jazz music, rock music, Krishna conscious music, you can listen to the news, you can do so many things, but all you see is one thing, which is the air. So same thing in Prabhupada's books, you just see one thing, but according to, what you're tuning, and or how you're tuned, then you can extract all kinds of different extraordinary things from Srila Prabhupada's teachings. And it's simple, nice, digestible for everyone. So that's really empowerment. That's what it means to be empowered. Now, let's just do this verse here. This is a very famous shloka. Seti parananata painu Yahalaki madadadahana churigenu Seti parananata painu Yahalagi madadadahana churigenu That. Parananata, Lord of my life. Ainu, I have gotten. Yaha, whom. Lagi, for. Madanadahane, in the fire of lusty desire. Juri, burning. Genu, I have become. I have gotten that Lord of my life, for whom I was burning in the fire of lusty desire. Please repeat. I have gotten the Lord of my life, for whom I was burning, in the fire of lusty desire. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated, Kamam, Krodam, Bhayam, Sneham, Vaikyam, Suritam, Evacha, Nityam Haro, Vidadhato, Yanti, Tan, Mayatam, Te. The word Kama means lusty desire, Bhaya means fear, and Krodha means anger. If one somehow or other approaches Krishna, his life becomes successful. The gopis approached Krishna with lusty desire. Krishna was a very beautiful boy, and they wanted to meet and enjoy his company. But this lusty desire is different from that of the material world. It appears like mundane lust, but in actuality it is the highest form of attraction to Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a sannyasi. He left home and everything else. He certainly could not be induced by any mundane lusty desire. So when he used the word Madanadahane, in the fire of lusty desire, he meant that out of pure love for Krishna, he was burning in the fire of separation from Krishna. Whenever he met Jagannath, either in the temple or during the Rath Yatra, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to think, now I have gotten the Lord of my life and soul. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shaskaya Chakshurumilitam Jena Tasmaya Shri Gurve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Radha Krishna Shri Gaura Bhakta. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. I found this verse somewhere because it's not clear whether this was a existing sort of song that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was just using, just like what you led earlier. It comes later. This verse, yes, Yako Marahara Saiva Hivara. That's actually sort of a popular song that was being a love song, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sang that because in relationship to Krishna, its mood was appropriate for his bhava, for his mood of separation from Krishna. And then Rupa Goswami later on explained that verse with a shloka of his own. Priyasoham Krishna Sahachari Kurukshetra Militastataham Saradham Vigam Vaibho Sangamam Sukham. Like that. But this verse, and I just can't remember where it is, but it's somewhere in many books, it's actually quoted, although I don't remember again whether it's in this dialect. This looks like a Oriyan dialect, although not being a language scholar, I can't say about these words, Judigenu or Painu. That's like that, Oriyan, it's like that with you. But this same verse was there, and it's Srimati Radharani who is speaking. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very mysterious, so very difficult to understand. Jagannatha's Babaji, he would say this thing that I have some idea of Krishna and Krishna's tattva ontology, but understanding Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is extremely difficult. And that's Jagannatha's Babaji. It's extremely difficult because, of course, Krishna is inconceivable anyway. But some of these principles of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's nature, his tattva, his ontological being, are really extremely difficult to understand. How Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. Radha Krishna Panavikriti Alani Shakti Rasman. But now, he's Krishna, and he's taken on and that's what's going on. Krishna is entering to the mood of Srimati Radharani, because she's the topmost devotee, and then sometimes he enters into the moods of other devotees as well. Sometimes he'll enter into the mood of some other gopis, or into the mood of other Brijbasis, or into the moods of other devotees, and sometimes he plays like Hanuman and monkeys attacking Sri Lanka. So he gets into all kinds of moods. Sometimes he again goes back to being God, and he gets absorbed in the mood of Nrsimhadev, or Viraha, or he shows his universal form to Dvaitacharya. So there's so many things going on there. But then in this particular aspect that we're reading here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in Jagannath Puri, and he's Krishna, and he's absorbed in the mood of Srimati Radharani, and he's so absorbed that he goes before Lord Jagannath, and he sees Jagannath as Krishna, and he thinks, I'm Srimati Radharani. They happen to be the same person. And they're both absorbed, and Jagannath's absorbed in being Krishna. Krishna, who's separate from Vrindavan, he's in Dwarka, and Jagannath's thinking, oh, finally Srimati Radharani is gone. So now I'm going back to Vrindavan. And these are the same people. I mean, they're the same one person. And Jagannath's not thinking, there I am, that's Lord Chaitanya. He's thinking, she's Srimati Radharani, but on top of that, he's also in a male form, which is sort of indicative of the nature of what Srila Prabhupada here says is spiritual love, how different it is from material experience, is that Jagannath doesn't have to see a female in order to think that here's Srimati Radharani. He can see a sannyasi, because he's not looking at the external, although there's no real difference between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's external and internal, because it's all Satchitananda. So it's extremely complex, and that's just something that's going on in Puri, but in the meantime there's so many other things going on in the material world and spiritual world, that this same one person, and it's just this one person enacting this particular lila, pretending, or absorbed, not pretending, but absorbed in someone else's mood, and he's in this dual form of the beloved. Jagannath is the beloved, that's called the Vishaya, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Ashraya. And the motivation for this, which was already described earlier on in the 4th chapter of the Adi-lila, is that as God, Krishna is obliged to stay in one type of identity, and that identity, or one aspect of relationship with devotees, and that is as the worship. Which means that he's out of the experience of what it means to be the worshipper. So he's the beloved, but he's not in the relationship of the lover. And that's, so the whole idea of there being others aside from Krishna in terms of his Vishnu expansions and so many other forms and living entities is because Rasa Vaisa, Krishna wants to taste rasa. And the more living entities there are, the more rasa he tastes. And this brings happiness to him and it brings happiness to everyone else. But in a relationship, and the nature of this relationship is that he is then the beloved in that type of relationship. He's the focus because he's one, and then Ekabha, Shyam, and living entities are unlimited. So he becomes the focus. But when you're the person who everyone has attachment for, that's very good, but you're fixed in your role. And that's what is actually sort of inspiring Krishna and puzzling Krishna, is that he doesn't want to just stay in the role of the person who's being loved. He wants to know what it's like to love Krishna. And that's why he's coming as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there are different reasons for that, but the main reason is because he notices that the devotees or the lovers or the worshippers taste higher pleasure than he does. They get more out of loving him than he gets out of being loved. And of course, he's not satisfied by that, neither, and no one would be. Everyone wants the most, the best. And so Krishna then takes the form, appears in the form of the ultimate devotee, and which is he doesn't take the form. He just comes as a brahmana with a golden complexion, but internally he adopts the mood of Srimati Radharani and so many other devotees. And now, in relationship to Jagannath, in Jagannath Puri, he's tasting the pleasure and the moods of what it means to actually be a worshipper. And that gives him great ecstasy, great bliss. And here in this particular verse, there are also different moods in which worshippers are in which devotees are in. And the highest mood is the mood of separation of those who are in a conjugal relationship with Krishna, amongst whom the foremost personality is Srimati Radharani. So generally, and particularly in the last 18 years of his stay in Jagannath Puri, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is more or less always in the mood of Srimati Radharani. And he's always tasting these moods of separation. Here it says that the last 12 years were simply devoted to relishing the pastimes of Krishna in separation within the heart of the Lord. In the attitude of separation, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared mad both day and night. Sometimes he laughed, and sometimes he cried, sometimes he danced, and sometimes he chanted in great sorrow. At those times, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would visit Lord Jagannath. Then his feelings exactly corresponded to those of the gopis when they saw Krishna in Kurukshetra after long separation. Krishna had come to Kurukshetra with his brother and sister to visit. So anyway, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is wanting to taste these mellows of devotion, and this is sort of the pinnacle of that emotion is, and that's also described later, and later or thereafter, is that love for a person becomes somewhat I'm just thinking in terms of spiritual terms, love for a person becomes somewhat sort of casual, by association. When you're with somebody, you get used to them, you become accustomed to them, even spiritual love. And therefore, but love is much more intense when you're separated from that person. So that is, one is called yoga, and the other one is called viyoga or vipralamba. So this mood of separation is the most intense separation, and there are different types of separation from Krishna, but the most intense type is that when Krishna actually left for a long time. When Krishna left Vrindavan and he went to Mathura, and from Mathura to Dwarka, then the inhabitants of Vrindavan were in that mood that Krishna's gone and he's not coming back. So Krishna's Kavach quotes Madhavendra Puri's verse, one verse, Aidina Dayandana Kahe Mathuranata Pradava. And this verse that expresses Srimati Radharani's bewilderment. Now you've gone to Mathura, so now what will I do? How will I live? How will I continue to live and keep my life together? And when Krishna was in Dwarka, then there was supposed to be this eclipse, and it was most appropriate to be observed in Kurukshetra. So then they went to Kurukshetra, and Kurukshetra is not very far from Vrindavan, at least by comparison to Dwarka. So Delhi is like 120 kilometers, and then Kurukshetra is another maybe 120 north of that. So it's only like 250 kilometers, which you can walk, say, 10 days, 15 days comfortably. So he invited the inhabitants of Vrindavan to come, and they came to Kurukshetra, and that's described in Krishna later on in the 80-something chapter, 82 or 84th chapter of Bhagavatam. And they met over there, and particularly when they met, then Srimati Radharani, then she expressed this thing, now I've gotten that Lord for whom I was burning in the fire of lusty desire. Lusty desire, here it says Madan. Madan means Cupid. Madan Dahani. Dahani means fire. So Cupid means that, or here when we use lusty, it means that kama, this word kama is used, which denotes also spiritual love in the mood of a lover and beloved, not friendship, not parenthood, but between a male and female, and particularly as a paramour or outside wedlock. So that very, very, and here it's sort of a word, burning in desire, which we take it to be a nice literary ornament, but that is literally speaking the experience. For instance, there's described in Bhakti Ratnakara that Rupa Goswami, once when he was with other devotees, and he was actually feeling quite disturbed in separation from Krishna. So he sighed, and when he made this deep sigh, then the devotees who were near him, his breath was so hot that when it touched the devotees' skins, it all erupted in blisters, and like when you get burns. So when they say that he's burning, then literally speaking, that's the experience. Actually burning for us, it's like a nice word to describe something, but it's more than that. It's so intense, that fire of separation is so intense that it actually like a fire. It's as if you stick your hand in the fire. So it's like that. But it's ecstasy. That's the difference. It's painful, but that's a type of ecstasy, spiritual ecstasy. And finally when they met, then she thought, now I finally met Krishna. Priyasoham Krishna Saha Charati Kurukshetra Militas. This is called Kurukshetra Milan, meeting in Kurukshetra. Tataham Saradha, so I'm the same Radha. Ubayor Sangamam Sukham. And now there's great sukha, there's great happiness in the Sangha, in our meeting. But I'm not happy here. This is not really the right place. This is Kurukshetra. Lord Parashuram's killing the Kshatriyas over here. All these lakes are made from the blood of the Kshatriyas. So it's a place where there's a lot of violence took place. And of course, just recently there was a huge, this takes place after the war. So just recently there was this huge big battle going on there at the same time. He said we should go back to Vrindavan, because in Vrindavan then there's Govardhan Hill and Jamuna, and it's quiet and peaceful, and there's no big armies there, and there's no elephants, and you're not a king, and you're dressed like a cowherd boy, and that's really the best atmosphere for that's the best atmosphere for Krishna to enjoy. And that's what Rath Yatra is all about. So then bringing Krishna back into Vrindavan, it's being emphasized by Rath Yatra festival. And literally speaking, then they began to pull the chariot, but Krishna said, well, let me just finish off some things and then I'll come back. And then Krishna came 2 months following, 2 months he stayed here. They stayed for 2 months in Kurukshetra. And although this sacrifice was just quite brief, and then some period of time after that, then Krishna did go to Vrindavan, he returned to Vrindavan. Although you'll find in different places, Srila Prabhupada said Krishna left Vrindavan and he never went back. It's not an issue whether we went back or not, because it's also stated in the Bhagavatam that he goes back. And Prabhupada knew that, but anyway, he's saying this just to emphasize when Krishna is entering, because if you read Prabhupada's books elsewhere, Krishna will say something else. So, because it's quite interesting, both, Srila Prabhupada says both. So he says he never went back to Vrindavan. Here, this is the 9th verse of chapter 11, first canto. He says, O Lotus-eyed Lord, whenever you go away to Mathura, Vrindavan, or Hastinapur, right here in the verse, and it's not that explicit in the text. The text says, Yari Ambujaksha Bhogavan Kurun Madhun. He's just saying in a verse the word Madhu. But when it's, and Madhu generally refers to Mathura. So the Prabhupada translates with Madhu, meaning the inhabitants of Mathura or Brajabhumi. And then in the text, Prabhupada says, whenever you go away to Vrindavan, Hastinapur, when you go away to Mathura, Vrindavan, and Hastinapur to meet your friends and relatives. So then you have to adjust that. Prabhupada says he never went back to Vrindavan. And then he writes in the text, well, whenever, it doesn't talk about one incident, because Krishna went back many times, repeatedly. Anyway, these are the expressions of, and Jiva Goswami writes about it, Vishwanath Chakravarti. fact, all the acharyas write about Krishna's return to Vrindavan, where they make reference to it. So he says, now we finally got Krishna after great separation, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also experiencing this when he's dancing in front of the Rath Yatra particularly, completely absorbed in this mood, and this becomes then the theme later of this chapter, the interaction of, it's in the 6th chapter of Madhya-lila, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's ecstasy, Rath Yatra. And it's very important for us to understand these things, because our business is to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And on one side, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's external lila is spreading Krishna consciousness, but Srila Prabhupada and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami uses these words like it's external, it's secondary. Not that it means that it's unimportant, but that it's actually a consequence of something else. It wasn't the main reason why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, Krishna came for this. He came primarily to experience these tastes of ecstatic devotional service, and simultaneously, because the Yuga Avatar, Yuga Dharma spreading coincides, therefore he simultaneously performed those activities. And Ye Krishna Tat Bhaveta. So our business is to know the truths of Krishna, Janma, Karma, Chame Divyam. So Krishna said, you should know about my Janma, how I appear, why I appear, what's the reason, and Karma. And you should understand my activities, all different activities. And then Chakpadiham Punara Janma. And when we do that, then we gain access to going back to Godhead. Because if you love someone, then you're interested, you want to know everything about them. So, not just some things, but you just want to naturally, tell me more, I want to know more. So if we love Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if we want to serve Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then we want to know everything about him as much as we can. And one is never tired by this. This is what the sages say in the very beginning, we never tire of hearing of the Lord's wonderful pastimes. And Srila Prabhupada also in his letters and conversations, he really highlights this Rath Yatra festival. So we are going to France for the Paris festival, because it's unique, and that it's a festival that we do outside. So we got a lot of festivals going on: Janmashtami, Radhastami, Govardhan Puja, Nityananda Trayodasi, Gaur Purnima, etc. These are all going on inside the temple. And more or less, maximum what we do is we go out and we chant Hare Krishna on the streets, we do Harinam. But here, this is where the whole festival, it starts outside. It starts and ends outside. And it's not only that, we're going, but the deity is also going outside. And that's a very extraordinary thing, that Krishna leaves the temple. You have many examples of festivals in India where the small deities, the Utsav deities, go outside, but around the temple, they're in the temple compound. They don't go walking down streets and sitting on carts or driving down through downtown, who knows, New York, London, Paris. They stay within the temple compound. So this is really extraordinary, and one of the extraordinary aspects is that because deities aren't supposed to do that, people are supposed to come to the deity. So it's sort of an indication of how malleable Krishna becomes in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. In other words, he's willing to really, we usually talk about Archana, or the rules of deity worship as they apply to us. This is Archana, who is a deity worshippers. They apply to the deity. You know, those deities are meant to be in the temples, but still go outside. But so here in Jagannath, he crosses those boundaries and he goes outside. He goes all over the world, and he goes into towns and cities, and these aren't devotees or so on, these are non-devotees, materialistic people, mediums and so on. And he gives his darshan to them all, he gives them the opportunity to pull the rope, they can make offerings, they can... So, and how's it happening? How's it taking place? Of course, it was already taking place before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, but particularly Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's influence has brought this festival all over the world. It wasn't happening anywhere outside of Puri. So it wasn't even happening anywhere in India, what to speak of happening in other places. So Krishna becomes extremely malleable, he becomes extremely merciful under Lord Chaitanya's care, and that's then described how this competition is going on between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna. Is that the cart starts and it goes, and when it goes to the back of the cart, the cart stops, and it goes to the front of the cart goes. So it means, at least one aspect of it is, and Srila Prabhupada points out, that it proves that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was stronger in this transcendental competition of love. He was stronger than Krishna, although they're both Krishna. But Chaitanya is stronger than Krishna. So it means also that as long as we take shelter and stay very much within Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, and we were speaking about this the other day, what's very, very difficult to attain, which is Krishna. Krishna becomes easily attainable. And to show that, to prove that, then Lord Chaitanya brings him out of the temple, and he brings him onto the streets and woods. Here he is. And it's just a matter of us then taking advantage or taking the benefit of Krishna's presence. And that's why Srila Prabhupada is more or less telling us this thing, that you just do these very simple things of chanting Hare Krishna and follow principles which will ensure that you're chanting Hare Krishna. If you don't follow principles, it's highly unlikely you're going to keep chanting Hare Krishna. And then you just go back to Godhead. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has made Krishna so easily accessible in this day and age. Because why? Madan also comes from the word mad. Mad means intoxicated. Someone becomes intoxicated. So Jagannath is also, he's actually quite intoxicated. That's why he looks like he looks. And intoxicated people are like when you're on Sankirtan, right? So the ideal is a malleable drunk. Because then you just, open your wallet and they just hand everything over. So that's also the case. Jagannath is so intoxicated with love of God, particularly when he's meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's servants, representatives, because he's thinking, well, here comes a servant of Radharani, then she must be not too far away. So that more or less, you can get him to open his wallet and not want money from him, but that he's willing to give that which is otherwise very difficult to get, which is really love for him or attachment for him. They're in one sense very similar, because Srila Prabhupada would say that Jagannath is like 80% merciful. And when Krishna becomes really overwhelmed by this audarya, by this mood of giving himself to others, that's when he's 100%, then Krishna's already becomes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So you can see that Jagannath's sort of like transforming. It's still the color that's the same, but his body's already looking different. So Jagannath's about as far as Krishna goes before he becomes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in terms of transformation. So he's also on the verge of giving everything fully, being fully merciful, because he's intoxicated by love of God, but he's still remembering, yes, I'm God. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is intoxicated by love of God, but he's gone, he's forgotten that he's God, and he's already thinks that he's somebody else. And that's why Srila Prabhupada places, I remember reading some earlier letters where Prabhupada was talking about, he's talking about Rath Yatra as some kind of completely separate. He talks, yes, you should perform this activity, distribute books, chant Hare Krishna, and perform Rath Yatra. Like it's some kind of unique festival. And it is, for many of these reasons. Rath Yatra is unique and difficult for us to actually perceive all the wonderful transcendental benefits that we get and devotees get from Jagannath's darshan, prasadam, and so many different types of prasad or mercy that he's distributing under Lord Chaitanya's influence. Anyway, there's so much in relationship. Yes, it may be in the not Lalita Madhava, Vidagha Madhava, that this verse is there, is found. Anyway, I guess we could stop there. Could go on for a long time. And these are somewhat sort of esoteric. Should we know them? Well, at least we should hear about them. At least we should hear about them. That's the minimum, because they're here. Otherwise, if we shouldn't hear about them, Prabhupada wouldn't have written about them. But as I mentioned, yes, if you're interested in a person, then you want to know. And according to different ability, the devotees will be able to understand things to a different degree, or they will have different perspective on this. But these are the sort of the general moods and the general idea of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Jagannath and Rath Yatra festival, and it's really very wonderful. And then it has a very, very special mood and devotees who've gone to Puri, they experience that it's like a special place. One is because of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who lived there for such a long time, but also Jagannath is very prominent and very, very, very merciful. He's really the presiding deity there. There are other deities, but he's the boss. Anyone have any questions or comments?
Madhya-lila was giving class on this subject matter. He was saying that when Lord Chaitanya was, when he went to Vrindavan, he was unable to maintain that mood of Gaura and manifest Krishna's mood. Therefore he left and went to Jagannath Puri. Now that Sri Prabhupada's established ISKCON in Vrindavan, and when we visit Vrindavan, if we just take shelter of ISKCON, then we can have the full blessings of Lord Chaitanya in that mood.
Sure. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in ISKCON, he's also outside of ISKCON. It's not dependent on ISKCON. Which is proof that you can't be Krishna conscious outside of ISKCON. Although, I'm not recommending it. Yeah, I didn't quite get what the correlation was between the two things, but that's also one of the reasons why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sent Lord Nityananda away. Because in Lord Nityananda's presence, Lord Nityananda's mood of brother is so strong that he has to reciprocate with being brother also. So that means he's Krishna, he's in the mood of being Krishna. It's hard for him to be Srimati Radharani around Lord Nityananda. So he's more in the mood of Krishna. And when he goes to Vrindavan, then everyone else, when you read Chaitanya Charitamrita or Chaitanya's visits to Vrindavan, everyone immediately says, here's Krishna. No one's saying, here's Radharani. They're all saying, here's Krishna. So when everyone's saying, here's Krishna, and then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, this isn't, came to be, of course that's one aspect, isn't it? He's not interested in being Krishna, he is, but he has a particular mood or role that he's wanting to play, and then people and circumstances will either facilitate it or transcendentally obstruct that. But that's all part of also Lord Chaitanya's pastimes and some overlapping of different aspects of his mission. Sometimes the internal one becomes prominent, sometimes the external one becomes prominent. Sometimes preaching becomes when he's with Sivarama, with Acharya, and Prakash and Saraswati, then this preaching mission becomes the prominent aspect of Lord Chaitanya's life.
You said that Prabhupada put this subject, mystic subject in his book, and therefore we can hear about this. And he didn't put that Krishna come back to Vrindavan. So how often? So we can read about other book of Acharya that about this subject or no?
Yeah. Prabhupada's written in his books, because there's only so much you can write. That's why the Acharyas wrote books, so that devotees can Rupa Raghunatha Padevode Akuti. Prabhupada says when you read the books of the Acharyas, then you know about Yugalatviriti, then you know about Krishna. You know about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. But those books should be read under guidance, because there's so much to read, so you have to know what books to read at what time. Otherwise one may get into something that one's not ready for or qualified for. But in principle, there are so many books to be read and they're being translated, and that's, although very often the translations aren't necessarily as good as they should be. That's why BBT is developing a whole Sanskrit school in Vrindavan, and the devotees are being trained how to translate the way Srila Prabhupada translated, using Srila Prabhupada's method and technique. But then people say, if for some reason one doesn't have time to read all those books, then at least Prabhupada in two places writes that at least they have to read these 4 books. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Gita, Bhagavatam, Nectar of Devotion. If you don't read these books, then you won't be able to maintain any quality standard of Krishna consciousness. But if one does read those books, and only those books conscientiously, he'll get the same result as reading many books. Because ultimately, by chanting Hare Krishna, all those other books, whatever acharyas write, they're just describing what takes place on the spiritual world, on the spiritual platform. So by chanting Hare Krishna, when you come to the spiritual platform, then you enter into all of those subjects anyway.
Just wondering, Maharaj, if the story of Maharaj and Druna and how Lord Jagannath came to existence. Do we know how the Rath Yatra festival started historically, or?
It was part of the pastime. It's part of the pastime that, I don't remember, but how he would go out to be visible outside of the temple. And although it was enacted that it actually represents this eternal Leela, that was not clear. It was just clear that Jagannath's going outside, but this represents Kurukshetra Leela. That people weren't clear about. They were very unclear about who even Jagannath is very often, and even Jagannath Mandir has gone through different types of management by Buddhists, and saying that Jagannath's a form of Buddha. But it was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who again really focused that this is what this festival is all about. Yeah, I forgot that Madhya-lila Prabhu was here. Talking about Lord Jagannath. Living in Jagannath's place. So.
In German, Prabhupada says that Hare Krishna mantra is in reference to Radha and Krishna.
That means what?
It's in reference to Radha and Krishna. But in teachings in Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada says how Krishna and Ram means Lord Balaram. So I just wondered why.
It just depends on what people want from chanting Hare Krishna. If someone considers that Lord Krishna is Lord Ramachandra, then that's his mood of devotional service, and he can approach the mantra like that. If someone thinks that Ram refers to Balaram, then he can approach it like that. If someone thinks that Hare refers to Hari, then he can chant it. But our understanding of the Hare Krishna mantra is that it's glorification of Radha and Krishna. So mantras in general can be chanted for different purposes, and therefore very often the words of the mantra are flexible or can be interpreted or understood in different ways. So Britrasura, when he appeared, it was just simply because there was a little difference in accentuation, and therefore there was the result of the mantra was completely different than what it was intended for. But and of course these are all spiritual purposes. Similarly, for instance, if someone chants Hare Krishna with the idea that he wants to go to the heavenly planets, then that's where he's going to end up. So according to the abhilas, according to the desire that one has, then mantra, particularly spiritual mantras, and Hare Krishna mantra, which is Maha Mantra, they will give an appropriate result. So someone can chant Hare Krishna and they want to go to Vaikuntha, then they'll go there. If someone wants to go to Goloka Vrindavan, then they'll go there. So the mood, that's why philosophy is important, because unless you have a clear concept of what your mantra is and why you're chanting that mantra, then you get different results. So Srila Prabhupada is, Srila Prabhupada, when he says, everyone, if someone wants to worship Lord Ram, then they can think of Ram when they're chanting Hare Krishna and so on. And Prabhupada's talking to people who are going to hell. So for them to go to Vaikuntha is a real change in direction. And, so if they have any kind of inclination, yeah, great, let's just, fan that inclination. If instead of following Ravana, they want to follow Ram, great, then, let them follow Ram. And if they chant, but they actually stay very close to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, then ultimately their Ram will become Krishna. They'll change that mood, just like they saw how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally trying to inspire some of his followers to move their mood of devotion from Lord Ramachandra to Krishna. So if you stay in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, ultimately you'll come to chant Hare Krishna like that. So, but there are different stages of chanting. Some, just get them to chant, whatever reason, if they've got a reason. If their reason is because they like Lord Ramachandra, that's great. It's better than, liking some demigod or doing so many demoniac activities. So there's also, in Srila Prabhupada's preaching and writings, there's a lot of strategy involved. So one should be very clear on what the sadhya is. And the goal of Srila Prabhupada's teaching is that people should, that's why Chaitanya came here, is to actually teach us about Braja Bhakti and go back to Goloka Vrindavan. But if en route, one has other type, or to get there, you have to fan people's interest in other things, just like if, devotees got into worship of, just like here, we got so many Shalagram Shilas and worship different forms of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada would encourage that, that's fine. But ultimately we realize that whatever form, for instance, of Shalagram it is, for us ultimately it's Krishna. Because ultimately our goal is Krishna. So ultimately that's our attainment, that's where we want to go. But how to get there? And that's why it requires an empowered preacher to inspire people to get them there. Because, for instance, we see that when some Gaudiya Vaishnavas are really set on this idea that, well, if you meet a drunk on the street, you got to tell him about Radha Krishna's pastimes. Who's Radha and Krishna? So it doesn't work. Not only it doesn't work, but it actually crosses the boundaries. Shradadhiti, Sindhati, Shuddhadesha, Shiv Namapad, then you're committing offense to the holy name. So, no, don't tell them about Hare Krishna. Just tell them that you're not his body. And, when they believe in spirit, then you can tell them about God. And when they believe in God, you can tell them God's blue. And then you can work up like that. And if they like God as being green, then we have a green God. And if they want a yellow God, just believe in God. and that's fine, because by chanting Hare Krishna, they'll become purified. And by serving Lord Chaitanya, their consciousness will be directed, and their perspective in time will also adapt, will change. And if not, then that's fine. There's, Lord Ramachandra also wants new people in Ayodhya, so certainly better than where we are. Okay, I guess we'll continue this evening, and